Ahead, General Wesley Clark joins us with his take on the summit meeting in Alaska. There was a dramatic buildup. 3.5 years into the brutal and bloody war in Ukraine after the illegal Russian invasion that has always featured targeting civilians, President Trump announced he would meet with Vladimir Putin and try to negotiate a peace deal.
It became more and more complicated as time went on. It was simple at the beginning. It wasn't going to happen. But it became more and more complicated. But I think we're getting close.
The president acknowledged the frustrations of dealing with the Kremlin dictator.
I'd have like a great call with him, and then missiles would be lobbed into Kiev or some other place, and you'd have 60 people laying on a road dying. I said, that's cold. That's cold. We're going to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin, and at the end of that meeting, probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made.
Now, as the president was talking about land swaps, there were obvious problems. Volodymyr Zelensky wasn't going along, saying he couldn't negotiate with Putin while Russian forces are continuing to bomb his country to improve their military position. And then, there's no other way to put this, a dramatic lowering of expectations for the sit-down in Anchorage.
I think this is a listening exercise for the president. Look, only one party that's involved in this war is going to be present. And so this is for the president to go and to get, again, a more firm and better understanding of how we can hopefully bring this war to an end.
After the meeting, despite some upbeat talk, it was clear not much was accomplished. No ceasefire, no details, no questions from the press, just vague assurances that some progress was made without explaining what that was. President Trump, to his credit, didn't oversell what happened, or more precisely, what didn't happen.
There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there.
The president, who meets with Zelensky and European leaders tomorrow at the White House, said there would probably be another meeting with Putin. I'm Howard Kurtz, and this is Media Buzz. The media reaction to the Alaska session varied sharply, but much of it was negative.
So he went for a ceasefire. He leaves with nothing. Putin got a flyover, a red carpet, a lot of handshakes.
The big winner of today's summit, outside of all of that, what we just saw, was undoubtedly Vladimir Putin.
This joint news conference was anything but. It was not a news conference. There were no questions taken by either leader. There were many yelled by reporters there, but we don't have a sense of what exactly is in this agreement or this deal.
I think it was brilliant by President Trump to actually say, look, we don't want to just give an unlimited podium to Vladimir Putin. Go ahead and make his comments so that President Trump can clean up any messes that may have been left on aisle 7.
The more I replay it in my mind, it is so extraordinarily vague. It lacked almost any real substance.
Joining us now to analyze the coverage in New York, Rich Lowry, editor-in-chief of National Review. And with me, Megan Hayes, former top official in the Biden White House. Rich, big picture first. Was this a setback for President Trump? The coverage has been heavily negative, even from some of those who ordinarily support the president.
Yeah, I think Putin moved the ball a little bit in his direction, right? Putting off the talk of the ceasefire, at least for now, and getting Trump to stop threatening secondary sanctions and harsher measures. But Howie, I think what we've learned, you can't be premature on these things. You can't judge them too quickly. That's what we learned with the trade deals. That's what we learned with getting NATO to commit to spending more on defense. The media coverage always tends to be, this is stupid, this is doomed to failure, just inevitably. And then very often, not always, but very often, there's a method to the madness, and Trump ends up getting where he wants to go. So I'm in a wait-and-see mode.
Well, that's fair because there's a lot of things that we still don't know. Trump did leave much earlier than expected, but Megan, did this lowering of expectations, it's just a listening exercise, help cushion the blow of not coming away with much that was concrete that we know about?
Yeah, it was kind of incredible to watch them come out and say, we're going to get a deal, to we don't know if we're going to get a deal. Now we're just listening. So setting the expectations game is someone who's worked in the White House and been part of these summits. You always want to set expectations lower, but you also don't want to plan a summit or a bilateral conversation without knowing what the deliverables are. Most of these conversations should have been worked out much further, and the leaders are the ones that put the final touches on it, and you go out and you announce the deal. So it's incredible the way they've kind of handled this, and it's a massive failure on Trump's part that he just let Putin have the red carpet, and metaphorically and actually the red carpet was just rolled out on American soil for him. So it's, the media is not wrong in being critical.
President Trump, Rich, just posted something on Truth Social saying that the fake news, let me just get this right here, fake news violently distorts the truth. So he sees this as a success, obviously, and the coverage is not going along. But Fox News has confirmed, along with the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, that Trump is going along with a Putin plan to forget about the ceasefire and to give the Kremlin control of that whole Donbass region of Ukraine, eastern Ukraine, in exchange for ceding some land elsewhere. Why would Zelensky go along with that?
Well, it's going to be very hard to get him go along with that. I mean, it's going to be hard for the Ukrainians even to accept a deal along the current line of control, the territory that Russia's already taken. Giving them more that they haven't already conquered is going to be a hard pill to swallow. But Howie, again, I've learned, let's wait and see what Trump says in public. Then I believe it's his position. There are also indications the other way. Steve Witkoff's out there saying Putin, I find this a little hard to believe, but that Putin is willing to accept a U.S. security guarantee for Ukraine. So again, I think there are a lot of balls in the air. And I do think, Howie, one constant theme of the coverage, if there had been a Democrat who was bound and determined to bring an end to a major European conflict, the color of the coverage would all be through the prism. This is a real laudable effort. Wow, what a peacemaker, what an idealist. Maybe it won't work out, but it's worth trying. Instead, at best, that's a to be sure line that's included in some of the stories. And even worse, some of the coverage just assumes that Trump is a Russian asset because he wants desperately to forge a peace deal here.
Well, Steve Witkoff was on Fox News Sunday, the special Mideast envoy, and he didn't deny what I just read to you about going along. He just said we're trying to get both parties together. And Zelensky, just a couple hours ago with European leaders, said there has to be a ceasefire first because his country is still getting bombed. So, Megyn, many pundits are saying Putin was a sort of a pariah. In many countries, he can't visit there because of he's been accused of being a war criminal, and that he already won by getting a meeting on U.S. soil.
Yeah, the United States just validated him, and we became an ally of Russia rather than an ally of the of Ukraine and our NATO allies there. So it's interesting to sort of see, but it's just also interesting. We want to have a ceasefire, but also if we had sanctions already verified, we would not be in the situation we'd be in because there would be a ceasefire if Putin was going to go along with U.S. securities.
So why do you think there is not?
Because I don't think that Putin has any interest in having a deal. He wants us to go back. He wants to take Ukraine, and then he slowly wants to take back the rest of what the old USSR.
Right. Rich, in a conventional summit meeting, I guess I would put it, that most of the details are worked out in advance by staffers and so forth. But Trump, who's always had a friendly relationship with Putin for a decade now, has great confidence in his ability to get in a room and persuade another world leader, although there end up being teams from both sides.
Yeah, obviously he believes a lot in his power as a negotiator personally, believes a lot in personal relationships. I thought it was very telling that he said, well, I'll know whether there's going to be a deal or not within the first minute, just sort of reading his body language and what he's saying. But this is why it was unlikely that there would be a deal. I mean, this thing really needs to be worked out, needs to be written down, and you can't do that in a room just with two leaders talking. So I think it was appropriate. The White House downplayed expectations for this going in, and then we'll see, what happens with meeting with Zelensky on Monday. And again, it's possible Trump shakes something loose here that no one else would have. It's also possible it ends in failure and the war goes on. But it's given that Kyiv's not going to conquer Russia and Russia is not going to retake Kyiv, eventually you're going to have a deal here, and it makes sense to at least try, in my view.
Right, and if it doesn't work, then the war goes on, and that's more people being killed on both sides. And Megyn, you helped plan and were there for part of the Biden Putin summit in 2021. But what did that accomplish?
Well, it did not, but we had a meeting. It was not on U.S. soil, and I think that we were trying to solve this problem before it started, and obviously that didn't work. I'm not a foreign policy expert. I'm not part of the national security team, but I do think that we had a meeting. We did not roll out the red carpet for him. We did not allow him to come here, and that meeting was the conversation was a lot, more stern, but Putin is a tough person to deal with. He is a dictator for a reason. He is a pariah on the national stage for a reason. And the one thing, when Trump said that he would know if he had a deal within the first few minutes, that was obvious when Putin spoke first at the press event and Trump only spoke for 3 minutes and took no questions. He knew right then and there that Putin was playing him. Putin laid out a pre-planned remarks, and Trump just was flabbergasted, looked at him, and ended the meeting because he did not want Putin to have any more time with the U.S. press.
Right. The usual diplomatic protocol is that the host country, that person goes first. And I'm sure Trump wanted to take questions. And meanwhile, the media coverage was of a big TV spectacle, Rich. And Trump loves that, but it doesn't always lead to results. And I'm sure you can think of another example.
Yeah, well,
did not.
he loves the trappings of power. He loves pageantry. And I just don't get the obsession with the red carpet. This makes no difference at the end of the day, one way or the other. If you roll a red carpet for him and eventually you get a deal that's worth having and assures Ukraine's security going forward, great, who cares? And if it fails, the red carpet is not really material either. So Trump is an image maker above all else, and that is an arresting image, the red carpet and Air Force One in the background.
Right, but Megyn, we have a situation where Zelensky is saying, I'm not doing anything as long as my country continues to be bombarded. Now, we may look back if this falls into place and say, I agree that don't get distracted by the staging of it, that this was a turning point or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Zelensky is right here. He should have been at the table to start with. They should have never had this meeting without him there. This is not our...
But he was refusing to participate.
He's refusing to participate because he's not getting the security that he needs. He's not getting... Russia's never going to agree to the security that Zelensky needs to feel good about this. He's also... Why would Zelensky give back any of his land when Russia invaded a sovereign nation? The United States should not be on the side of Russia. We should not be negotiating with Russia. We should have been there with our European allies and Zelensky from the start. This should never have been between Trump and Putin.
But Trump is meeting with Zelensky and European leaders tomorrow, right? So the idea they've just been cut out and we're siding with Russia, I think, is completely false. And this is something that's really helpful to Zelensky, right? The European leaders, last 6 months, Trump administration have gone out of the way, a lot of them, to forge a really strong bond with Trump, and they're going to be urging them, pulling them back the other way in Ukraine's direction. Right. So we're not allied with Russia.
Well, we have more to say about this. Wesley Clark was NATO's supreme allied commander with plenty of war experience. And the retired four-star general joins me now from Little Rock. So Fox News has confirmed, according to a European diplomat, that President Trump is supporting the Putin plan to take full control of Ukraine's Donbass region in exchange for freezing the front line elsewhere. No ceasefire. Let me ask you bluntly, is that a betrayal of Volodymyr Zelensky and Ukraine?
They're going to be tough for Ukraine to handle this because there's no defensible terrain west of that defensive line that they're holding in Donetsk. They've held it. They've put it together over 11 years. When you go west of that, if they give it up, it's a straight shot to Kyiv. And so this means that the security guarantees would have to reflect major U.S. and allied troop dispositions blocking that area. You couldn't be like west of the river, west of Kyiv, and then think, oh, we're going to go in there if anything happens. You have to be there on the front line. We don't want to do that. And it also means giving up 250,000 people, their homes, their livelihood, their cemeteries, everything that's meant something in their lives, going to displace all these people. I mean, it's a lot easier to just change the boundaries of the oblast so that Putin can say he's got all of Donetsk Oblast, create a new boundary and say he's got it all, but leave the Ukrainians where they are.
So Putin is now saying no ceasefire, will go straight to a permanent deal. I mean, if he can get one. But Zelensky's supposed to go along with this while the bombardment of not just military people, but civilian people, which has been disturbing and horrific feature of this war since the illegal invasion. Zelensky going to just have to go along with this because he may have Trump and Putin in alliance against him?
Well, I think President Zelensky is going to appeal to President Trump for the ceasefire. He's already quoted as saying in Europe today that you can't negotiate this peace agreement while the fighting's going on. Of course, it's entirely in Russia's interest right now to keep the fighting going on because they think they have a little bit of momentum. They know Ukraine is struggling on the front lines, and they think the more they take, the greater the outcome for them in whatever eventually emerges. I will tell you this, I've done a peace agreement. Richard Holbrooke and our team did this in Bosnia, 1995. It took 3 months to work this. You have to get down into the exquisite details of this. It's not something that can be done on a napkin in a election. And so 3 months is a long time for Ukraine to hang on while the killing's going on. So I hope the president will listen to President Zelensky and renew his pledge. Let's get the fighting stopped so we can do this peace agreement.
Do you consider Putin to be a war criminal?
Well, he's an indicted war criminal. Look, no American president's ever been able to handle Vladimir Putin. We've consistently underestimated him, not understood his motivations. And when he speaks and says he wants to get at the root causes, that's what he said in Alaska, the root causes, that means all of Ukraine. It means the Baltic states. It means disassembling NATO protections for Romania, Bulgaria, taking over Moldova and Georgia, and maybe changing governments and so forth in Poland. He wants a rollback. He wants Russian control back to where it was in the days of the Soviet Union. And this is what the people in the region don't want. And one of the things we're not hearing in the discussion, we always talk about freedom not being free, the value of democracy. I don't hear any discussion of freedom and democracy in these talks. It's very pragmatic. It's very focused on trying to get an agreement, fine. But do we as Americans stand for something? And if we do, is there anything worth fighting for? And so this is really the bottom line question. If you're going to put a security guarantee in for Ukraine, it means you're going to fight for Ukraine, or there's no security guarantee. So I think we as Americans have to face this issue.
I have to remind people that Putin's position is that Ukraine has no right to exist. Let's take a step back after this huge media buildup and so much coverage. What did President Trump accomplish? A lot we don't know, but what did he accomplish by granting Putin a meeting on U.S. soil?
I don't think there's any issue with that, honestly. I mean, everybody is talking about it and making an issue. One of your previous guests said, the media is always against anything he does, and there's some truth in that. Look, he could have brought Putin over here to show dominance, to bring him to U.S. soil. You come into my place. I'm going to show you my fighter planes. I'm going to fly over with a B-2 bomber. You better pay attention. So, there's nothing wrong with that as a strategy. And really, I think you can't get lost in the atmospherics of this thing. This is a deep, deep issue. It's war and peace for Europe and the United States for the next, let's say, decade. This is going to take a long time to play out, given as long as Putin is there, he's going to continue to strive to restore the boundaries of the Soviet Union. And Europe is our greatest investment partner and our greatest economic trade partner. And so when you look at the value of Europe, you simply can't say, look, these Ukrainians, it's up to them. It's not up to them. It's up to the United States, as it always has been. For 75 years, almost 80 years since the end of World War II, the United States has built this world. Let's hold on to it.
General, I've got less than a minute left. Trump obviously loves these TV spectacles, face-to-face with another world leader. Doesn't always lead to results, as we all remember from Kim Jong-un. So has this been about creating a story where he comes in and saves the day? And if he does, great. I think he'll get a lot of applause and maybe a Nobel Prize.
Sure. I mean, of course, there's nothing wrong. This is his style. And, President Biden didn't have that style. Obama didn't have that ability. President Trump has it, and he should use his talent to help the United States of America and freedom and democracy. That's what it's about.
General Wesley Clark, really appreciate your time and your insights, having been at these tables. Have a great day.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.